Now I know this episode of My Hero Academia is probably going to be a pretty fan favorite episode, especially with what I heard from manga readers that this was going to adapt one of their favorite moments within the manga, and I could definitely see why. This was a really great episode of My Hero Academia, and what I really like about it is because we get to learn about One For All and One For All's origin story, kind of like learn a bit more about All Might and his past, learn about Deku and his future, and also what exactly is going on in this crazy world full of superheroes and supervillains. Ultimately, what I really enjoy with this episode is how they actually direct the kind of like backstory and kind of explanation that All Might is giving Deku, explaining the history of how One For All was made, but also the history of when the city first started getting powers, and how essentially supervillain kind of like started up, who essentially has the ability to like take powers away from people, whereas All Might's One For All ability that was passed down to him has the ability to give the power to someone. And I really like this because even though this isn't anything original in terms of the whole like, you know, there can't be good without evil, there can't be light without darkness kind of a thing, like that's just something that a lot of mediums will use in terms of like giving good storytelling points, things like that. But I appreciate that My Hero Academia did go this route, because when you typically think of like shonen battle series, you don't think of them doing anything more than just bad guys being bad for bad reasons kind of a thing. So it's nice to see that My Hero Academia is fleshing things out and going more like above and beyond than a lot of these series will. I think it's pretty clear, especially with what you saw with the hero killer stuff, that it is going to go in a progressively more dark situation with arcs as it goes on. Obviously, I don't know how much it's going to get dark, but I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some people who will argue it's insanely dark. There will be some people who will say, yes, it does get progressively darker, but it still has its lightheartedness. It's going to depend on the reader and also their age, because sometimes people can say things are super dark just because they haven't really read or seen anything that was dark before kind of a thing. But I appreciate what My Hero Academia is doing, because I do feel like they are kind of keeping a good balance at the moment with the hero killer stuff we saw. It was really nice to see something more, you know, gruesome and not so just kid-friendly, but at the same time retaining the charm that it had within the earlier episodes as well as within Season 1. But what I like with the stuff with All Might and his backstory is you can definitely tell the pain that is in his voice explaining this, and how essentially the one person who was supposed to get, you know, kind of like taken away was essentially this guy who supposedly had no quirk that was even good, but it was actually the original person who had One For All. And I like how essentially One For All's entire purpose was to get passed down from person to person to essentially get to the point that someone could take out this guy who has all of these powers, and that person was supposedly All Might, but All Might failed. And I really like when they kind of like have this image and you see him just kind of like crushed and defeated. I thought it was like a really good still shot that they did. But I think it's interesting because essentially, if we had to guess when My Hero Academia ends, like I feel like this guy's gotta be the final boss, like the final villain, or maybe not. But I feel like Deku will be the one to finally take him out. But Deku says, as long as I have you, All Might, it's fine. Like, I'm not scared because I have to go up against a guy that you couldn't fully defeat. I'm fine going up against him as long as I have your support. And you see All Might, like, struggling to basically tell him what's on his mind, and essentially he just thanks Deku and Deku goes on his way, and then he says something about, like, I won't be around when that happens. And I'm fairly confident I know what's going on there, because if we remember, like, back in, like, Season 1, I think it was in the first couple of episodes, you see All Might's, like, body is pretty beaten up. There's a lot of scars, there's a lot of battle damage. I mean, look at his normal form when he's not in his superhero form. He looks pretty beat up, and I'm fairly confident that the One For All ability is keeping his body alive because it enhances his body, his endurance, his strength. So he probably has more damage than an average human could survive, and once One For All is fully transferred over to Deku, once Deku has 100% control over One For All, and All Might no longer has the ability, I think that's ultimately going to kill All Might, and I think that's why he doesn't want to tell Deku, because if Deku knows that him mastering the ability that was passed on to him is going to kill his idol, he won't train to get good with his ability. That's how I feel, at least. I feel like, yes, they could do something else with it, but I feel like just the way they're laying it, what we know already with All Might and the One For All ability, and how it does transfer from person to person, and eventually the old user no longer will have the ability, I feel like ultimately that's what's keeping All Might from basically telling Deku everything, and essentially is why he says he won't be around when he does defeat him, because the only way Deku could probably even defeat this guy is if he has 100% control over One For All, and once that happens, All Might is probably going to pass on because its body won't be able to basically survive the damage that it's taken out of all these years of fighting crime throughout the city. That's how I feel, and that's why I really like this, is because you're seeing all this, like, because All Might's struggling to tell the story, but he doesn't tell Deku everything, because really, we know Deku, right? He's not going to want to master an ability if mastering that ability is going to kill the one he loves, kind of a thing. And I really liked the episode. It was also very kind of funny seeing the other heroes kind of like just kind of talk about their internships. We see Bakugo come back in with his nice clean hair, and everyone's kind of making fun of him, and then once he gets kind of like upset, his hair kind of flares back to normal. It was nice. Mineta as well, like that guy is just the ultimate pervert, and I just love, they don't overuse his character, but when he does go very perverted, it always cracks me up. But I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was absolute, just a fun time with the first half, with the second half being much more serious, much more grim and gloomy. And also, yeah, you can definitely say it was a lot of like kind of sadness, because you can just tell the pain and everything that's going on with actually All Might and things like that. It's going to be really interesting to see how this next arc's going to play out, which hopefully does have enough episodes to finish off. I've heard mixed things where some people, there will be enough to do this like camping training arc or whatever the hell they're doing here. So hopefully we get enough time to finish this up within this season, but I'm excited to see where next week's going to go. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Did you love the episode? Did you hate it? For manga readers, how are you enjoying this episode overall? Because I know this was going to be adapting something that people were really anticipating. So how did you enjoy the adaptation? Let me know your thoughts, and before I leave, smack that like button to share your support. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.